the reason that loan officers won't talk about all their, duct tape and staples and whatnot is because they're afraid you're going to take them away, right? And
Yeah.
it's going to mess them up.
Hello, everyone. If this is your first time joining us, welcome to the Mortgage Innovators podcast, where we deliver fresh and hopefully entertaining insights on all things mortgage and the innovation propelling our industry forward. My name is Dave Zitting with Avenue Technologies, makers of the Intralend platform. And every Tuesday, you can find our rotating group of co-hosts, or what the producers dub the Innovative Five, who all share their unique connection to the industry. I'm happy to have with me here today my co-host, Sue Woodard. Welcome, Sue.
Hey, Dave, just the two of us today.
It's just the two of us today. That's awesome. Yes. And I'm glad it's not just me. So it's a lot of fun. Thank you so much for joining us today. And a special shout out to our sponsor, Qualia. Qualia is the category creating digital closing platform used by thousands of lenders across the country to seamlessly work with their title and escrow partners. By working better together, Qualia is powering lenders to deliver a differentiated closing experience for their clients. Through real-time communications, closing status updates, and workflow management, Qualia brings lenders together with home buyers and sellers, title and escrow agents, and real estate agents for a secure and seamless closing experience. Qualia is proud to have been awarded the Housing Wire Tech 100 Award for real estate, as well as CB Insights FinTech 250 Award. Discover how you can work more efficiently with your title and escrow partners at qualia.com/innovators. That's QUALIA.com/innovators. And today we have a really fun topic. This is really down in the weeds, and it's kind of jumping into this really about our industry sort of a topic. And it's the ever elusive unknown workaround, right? So many working parts. And allow me to frame this up just a little bit. Our industry is made up of a culture of doers, fixers, folks that, if an obstacle is in their way, are masters of getting around it and just solving the problem themselves. Excuse my expression here, but growing up, I spent summers on a farm, and we used to call this using gray tape and baling wire, right? Just get it fixed, whatever we need to do, kind of a MacGyver strategy.
Right.
And, technology folks, engineers, product developers and whatnot, they get really frustrated when there's been time and space between some fix-it workaround in the back room that was deployed without them understanding what was going on. And if the product designers, if the technologists, if the CTOs of the organizations would have understood more of these sort of workarounds that were being developed by the folks in the trenches faster, more often, more understanding of what the gaps were, they could build dynamic and intuitive process around filling those gaps. And so how do we better as institutions explore the unknown workarounds that are happening at all of the different levels and business units and corporate to the field and all of the different vendors that we work with and whatnot? How do we explore what those are? My other question is, and then I'd love to talk about today, Sue, is what are the strategies in which we can get an inventory of what those workarounds are? Kind of what's the frequency, what's the strategy around that?
Yep.
And the big one is, as an industry, the housing industry, because of the makeup of the wonderful people that are just, we get up every day and every transaction is a little different. So we're already wired to know that, hey, today there's going to be a challenge and my job is to fix it. We're fixers, right? We're specialists at fixing. And so I think that sort of culture, that capability runs into areas that maybe we shouldn't be fixing. Maybe we should be expressing that better, feeding that information up to the people that need to know in the product design and technology suite of the organizations. And so being that what we are as an industry and the culture of our industry, does that slow down innovation or innovation adoption or maybe innovation perfection within any specific area of the industry. So that's what we've teed up today, and I'm excited to hear your thoughts on this subject, Sue.
Well, that was it. That was a great tee up. And I do have some thoughts on this. And I love that you started this by really talking about that this is an industry of doers and fixers and make it happen people, right? And you and I have both been in the trenches for many years in our careers, and we've been the doers and the fixers and making it happen and working with a lot of great folks to do that. In fact, it made me start thinking about, I think I've mentioned on this podcast before that my big technology I used back in the day was ACT. Cutting edge, right? That was what I used. But
Wow,
I
I remember ACT and Goldmine. Wow, ACT
was
was
like
the second version of Goldmine, right?
technology, right? And but I remember one of the things that I wanted, that I had my ACT do, is it would send me a reminder to get this piece of mail out of, I mean, I'd print these letters out and I'd stuff them in folders, and it'd say mail letter C to, the customer, and I'd go in the file and get letter C, and I mean, it's just crazy. But I had this, kind of weird, like you said, kind of the, I don't know what that was, haywire and baling something. I don't.
Gray tape or duct tape and baling wire. So
Okay. We said tape
any
and
farmer,
staples.
if they're
Tape and
listening, would
staples.
understand what that means, right?
But to that point, probably everybody listening to this can relate to that personally or professionally. You've probably got something where you're like, oh man, this thing is, yes, kind of jerry-rigged or kind of MacGyvered together. But at the
Right.
same time, when you're operating at a fast pace, like again, everybody listening to this has been, you kind of go with the, hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And it reminds me of even like sometimes, I don't know, switching a phone. I don't know about all you listening, but I dread changing my phone, because I know it's like, I know
Amen.
I've got all this crazy stuff, and it's like, and I don't want to go through the thing, but once I go through the thing, I'm like, oh man, look how awesome this is, right? So we know on the other side of the tape and staples and gray tape and whatnot, is a really good thing. But you brought up a really interesting point, and it's talking about, I think there's twofold. Number one, how do the folks that are that could be the engineering around it with a piece of technology, learn better, right? And how do you start to plug into what really is that user interface and that user experience? And the number of times that I've talked to folks on the engineering side where it's like, okay, you built it like this, but who all did you ask? How many of the actual people that are going to put their hands on this keyboard did you talk to, and who, and how did you have them use it? And they're like, well, we asked this one guy, and it's like, no, that's not how you can do it. So I think step one is really ensuring that if you are on the vendor side listening to this, it's really plugging in and making sure that you really understand and are investing in UI, UX, and in that design, and in doing the research, and in asking the question. So often we don't have, because we don't ask. Like, ask the question, watch how people use it, watch where they're struggling, watch where they're like ducking out of it because it's making them crazy, right? So I think that's a big part of it. And Dave, you said something else about technology or innovation adoption, and does it slow that down? And that's something I cannot tell you the number of times that I've seen that, because again, going back to, if you haven't figured out how is this actually going to work with the actual people that are supposed to use it, a lot of times an enterprise comes in, plops in a piece of technology, says, there you go, everyone, we've got new technology for you, enjoy. And too often there isn't enough attention paid to what are they doing currently, because they're probably solving all these problems. Maybe they're solving with post-it notes or spreadsheets or something, but how do we actually make sure that we do, what I've called a lift and shift? How do we lift them out of the old solution and shift them into the new one? And how do we help them do that, knowing that they're also a plane in flight and we're trying to, pop on a new wing? So what have you seen, Dave, on that point, when we really talk about that adoption and the lift and shift, even though we're talking about a lot of fast moving people who don't want to slow down, what have you seen that's worked?
Yeah. And before sharing some of that, I just want to touch on a couple of things that sparked my interest in what you just shared. I agree with you. The UI UX aspect of this, I think, is very great point, an incredibly good point. We spend so much time on the technology side, advancing UI, advancing UX, and there's an expectation there of what it was built to do, what it's supposed to do, and if it doesn't, or if it's not, either it's not being utilized the right way, or the design wasn't there that created the experience. And either of those kind of motivate out this gap. And then this gap is quickly filled by this elusive unknown workaround, right? And I really love what you're pointing out as well on top of that, that it's when you're bringing technology into an organization, all of the different individuals within the different business units already have stacks and stacks and stacks of workarounds.
Yep.
Post-it notes or spreadsheets or any number of things that they were doing. Bomb videos, I think, is like becoming a big workaround. If somebody doesn't know how to do something, put a bomb video on it, right? And it's really interesting that, you know, adding technology to eliminate all of the little workarounds and bringing UI and UX into an experience, but yet still we end up with a gap, and we end up with these specific areas of these elusive workarounds. And I really underline elusive because nobody's talking about them. They kind of, you know, they come up when they come up in our organization whenever there's somebody complaining about something that supposedly didn't work, right? And what happens very smartly, the product designers and the engineers and the management get together and they start interviewing people. They start trying to find out, well, why do you think it doesn't work? Because we think it works, but why do you think it doesn't work? And so as we go through this really detailed thing, we, you know, things get teased out of that.
Yep.
And somebody down the line that's more of a wrench, you know, taking a wrench and turning bolts every day, says, oh, well, I've added this piece. You know, I do this bomb video, or I've got this spreadsheet, and that's when alarms go off, especially for the product designers, where they say, wait a minute, you shouldn't have to do that. Why are you doing that? And did you know that the UI and the UX was built this way? Oh yeah, I knew that the UI and UX was built that way. However, here's what's happening. Oh, okay, great. We didn't know that. We can shift that slightly. Let's test that. And we're moving forward. But what is interesting is that there's this big knowledge gap and a lack of knowledge share, or at least the timing of knowledge share, from the point in which there was this gap, and typically in UI UX, to your point. And instead of getting that information flowing quickly, as an industry, I find we tend to find our own self fixes, and that slows the knowledge share, and then eventually it gets teased out. And so you know, we're getting better and better and better at it as an organization to you know, test, go back, record the experiences, you know, and we found out really quickly that in a culture of doers, we have to literally have discipline of saying, hey, this is research. We're really looking at what you're doing every day. We put committees together to, you know, make sure that the individuals are sharing their experience. And if we find inside of that experience, and sometimes it's hard to tease out, but we find it, that there are these kind of sidebar workarounds happening, that's when we then can go back and start to create architecturally solutions for that. And in an organization that we have process around that, I remember other management experiences that I had that it seemed almost impossible to find all of those different little back-end workarounds. And so I was motivated to talk about it today because I think it slows us down as an industry.
Yeah.
And I think that if we can build communication strategies and discipline around, hey, this is what the UX UI is supposed to do. What is your exact experience? Everybody, every participant, and then let's talk. You know, I think businesses advance quicker.
You know, it's what you were just saying is really important in terms of, I think, again, if you're on the vendor side, who is it that you're talking to get that user experience, I think is also very important. A lot of times people will say, well, we're going to get the top tier of producers. I want to get the top couple producers in the nation. We'll talk, you know, ask them. On the vendor side, that's not who you should be talking to. Cool, talk to them, but you got to operate to, how about all the rest of us? How about just, the people that are, the normal people that are going to be putting their hands on the keyboard and try to use it. That's a really important perspective. From the lender's perspective, again, when you're instituting a new technology, you absolutely do need to take that top tier of originators and help them in a different way. Look at what their custom processes are and say, and I think that's one of the great things about a lot of the technologies available now, is that you can customize it and say, hey, we're going to make your Dave's Inning way of doing things, work in this technology, right? But then you have to look at the rest of them and say, okay, what is everybody else? How do we take the, kind of the meat of this and make it work for everyone else? And so it's looking at those personas and not just saying we're going to try to make this fit, for the top tier people. The top tier people in this industry, the top originators, if you took your top 10 producers, for anybody listening, their businesses probably look really different. And one of them probably does use a bunch of Post-it notes. Another one is all about their mobile everything. Another one is the bomb queen, or, like everybody's doing it really differently. And so you take care of those people because, again, those are your top producers, but you really operate to what's going to help the bulk of people. And I think, Dave, one of the other really important things that you brought up is that why is it that people have these, workarounds and fight against you taking those workarounds away, is fear, right? Again, it ain't broke, please don't fix it. I'm running really fast right here. You're going to mess up my world. You're going to mess up, my relationships, my communication flow, my process, my special patented process that I have. You're going to mess it up. And so I think it's really understanding and not saying, I get very frustrated when people say, oh, loan officers, they just, don't want change. I didn't either when I was originating, because it's like, you're going to mess up my deal. And I think instead approaching it and saying, why would somebody be afraid of change? It's not just being averse to change. It's saying, hey, what is the fear there? And how do we help you say, hey, actually, you should get rid of your BlackBerry and get an iPhone? Because, let me tell you, I know it seems hard, but here's what we're going to do. And this is from somebody who had like the last BlackBerry on planet Earth, I'm sure, right?
Awesome.
But I just think that it's important when you do think about the workarounds are there for a reason, and not just fighting against them as a leader or a vendor saying, oh, that's so ridiculous, but saying, why does that exist? What need are they trying to fulfill? And ask kind of the 5 whys. Why are you using that? Why does that work better for you? Why do you think that? And really getting at the heart of the issue.
That's so brilliant, Sue. I completely agree with you. And really to underscore that thought that, look, don't disrespect the workaround, right? This kind of hidden back-end workaround, whatever it is. Don't approach it as a negative thing. It's getting the job done. There was a gap and the gap got filled, or maybe there wasn't a gap. It's really interesting. There's a lot of technologies out there, and I talk to other colleagues and they're like, our systems only get used this percentage. They're not even using all of the other pieces of it because, to your point, the lift and shift hasn't, full shift hasn't occurred, and they're just so stuck kind of doing it the old way. But maybe there is a real gap, and people just solve it themselves, and then nobody really understands what needs to adjust in the UI and UX. But I love what you said there, in that, look, we got to love what is. We got to love that this is a gap being filled by somebody that took the bull by the horns and solved the problem with whatever it is that they solved the problem with or filled the gap with. And so there's gold in understanding what that is. And of course, your other point is, the first thing you got to do is kind of really look at that thing, because it might be saving everybody. It might, everybody might be thinking that the whole system is working. Come to find out, there's a couple of links in the chain that are only there because of sticky notes, or because of
right,
some spreadsheet or something like that. And so that's really the crux of the question here is, as organizations, what is the frequency? What is the strategy? What is the what is the process in which we can find out what we don't know, because you don't know what you don't know until it kind of, you end up stumbling on it because somebody finally mentioned it in a meeting,
Yep. Yep.
right? And you're like,
Yep.
oh, I didn't know everybody was doing it that way. That
Yeah.
wasn't the design.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then you bring up a great point in that there's you know, different kinds of companies. You know, we're an organization with our technology, so it's quite a bit easier. We've designed everything. A lot of organizations have a whole bunch of different vendor technologies, and
Yes.
you're right. I mean, somebody's got to be asking the question, did the different vendor technologies get fully deployed? Did the lift and shift occur? Are their UI UXs supplying what's happening or what should be the result? And if there are these elusive unknown workarounds happening still, how are the vendors getting involved to help us as organizations get the lift and shift completed? And or hey, adjust your tech, you know, adjust the UI a little bit so that we end up with this sort of automated experience that we were needing in the first
Yeah.
place, right?
Yep. Yeah, the couple, I guess, pieces of advice I would give people, you know, folks listening. If you're a lender and you're adopting some new technology, ask that vendor partner, talk to me about the lift and shift. You know, where have you in your experience found that there needs to be some change management, and how are you going to help me do that? You must have best practices because you've done this bunches of times, so talk to me about that. I also think part of it is having an atmosphere in your organization of safety. The reason that loan officers won't talk about all their, you know, duct tape and staples and whatnot is because they're afraid you're going to take them away, right? And
Yeah,
it's going to mess them up. And so I think approaching it saying, hey, if you're all using duct tape, maybe we can do something better as an organization, but having, you know, and instilling that trust in that relationship where they know you're not coming in to take it away. You just want to try to, you know, help find ways to make things better. That way you'll find out, to your good point a minute ago, oh my gosh, everybody's using this weird, you know, this weird duct tape stuff. Let's actually fix this right as a company. So I think you're spot on with your guidance, Dave.
yeah, thank you. And that's wonderful advice, Sue. And I love the analogy, and you touched on this earlier, and I love airplane analogies, but it's likened to going to somebody and saying, hey, while you're flying the plane, we're gonna take your wings off and we're gonna put these new wings on. We're gonna do it really, really quick.
Yeah,
But
don't
they're
worry.
like,
Don't
wait
worry.
a minute,
Nothing can
for
go
some
wrong.
period of time, even a half a second, you're saying I'm not gonna have wings? That's a problem. And so, you know, that coupled with the fact that, you know, we just are absolutely a culture in this industry, in the housing industry, in every aspect of it. We're a culture of waking up, seeing a problem, fixing it, you know, and not waiting for everybody to get it fixed. And so, you know, those two things, I think we need to find strategy, communication strategy, and share, right? As we are taking on more technology, and in a previous segment we had, you know, there was a discussion around the individuals, you know, getting a little, you know, heartstrings getting pulled, because it's like, wait a minute, the tech's doing that? That's what I always did. You know, I don't know if I want the tech doing what I did, then where's my value going? And so, you know, there's just seems like there's a basket of sort of personalities and sort of kind of ownership motivations and different things like that, that if we could get to the other side of that, build strategy, build awareness, and everybody just come to the conclusion that, look, this is a people industry that's taking on technology, and that as long as there's emotions in buying a home, which there always will be, in my opinion,
Right.
those will just become more and more and more, then we have to have this human interface. And that, look, technology is here to make help the consumer have a better experience and help you be more productive, so that we can do more and we can be more effective in it. And that's where innovation really starts moving forward at a faster clip. And I
Right on.
think we're still figuring that piece out right there as an industry. We have strategies around it here, and they're working well, and we're learning every day, and it's really fun. But you had some great advice there, Sue, and I think that we should continue to noodle on that and maybe bring that to some future segments.
I love it. Well, we've gotten to talk about, like I said, gray tape, which I've never heard that before, duct tape, staples, Post-it notes, and spreadsheets, and ACT, and all kinds of fun stuff. It's always fun to talk with you, Dave, and I think this is a really, really cool discussion.
Awesome, Sue. It's been great. It's been an awesome segment, and I appreciate it. And it's always a pleasure to collaborate with you as usual. And I'd like to thank our audience for listening to today's episode as well. And if you like what you heard, make sure to subscribe to the Mortgage Innovators YouTube channel or wherever you podcast. And until next time.